Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie declared that we should all be feminists. But can we all be feminists? If you ask Hillary Clinton, she says it's perfectly acceptable for a woman who is pro-life to also call herself a feminist. But if you ask the Women's March, not so much. In early 2017, I found myself, along with the women that I was planning on marching with in the original Women's March in Washington, D.C., the New Wave Feminists, officially disinvited from participating. The Women's March told us that because we were pro-life, we weren't welcome. We marched anyway. My name is Deanna, and I'm an advocate, an attorney, an activist, and a pro-life feminist. But I wasn't always someone who would call myself a feminist. Growing up in the conservative Deep South, I thought that feminism was the real F word. Not a good idea. But luckily, later in my life, I was introduced to some amazing women who showed me that the feminist movement and the pro-life movement have a lot in common, namely that we want to support women. So if you're like younger Deanna, you're probably wondering, what is pro-life feminism? Well, you may have heard that feminism is the radical idea that a woman is a human being. Pro-life feminism is the radical idea that a woman and her unborn child are human beings. There are two core tenets to pro-life feminism: nonviolence and non-discrimination. And we believe that abortion fails both of those tests. If you look at the nonviolence, we choose nonviolent options as pro-life feminists, and we believe that women's liberation cannot be bought with the blood of our own children. And the unfortunate fact is that in every abortion, a member of the human species is either starved, poisoned, or dismembered. And therefore, that is not something that we can support. What about non-discrimination? There are some instances where abortion is clearly discriminatory whenever we're talking about abortions for gender, for race, or for potential disability of the child. But what about some of the more common reasons that we discriminate against the unborn? There are four main things that separate you and I from the unborn, but there are also some things that we have that separate us as individual humans. Size, level of development, environment, and degree of dependency. So, size. I have on heels right now, but if I take them off, I'm really, really short. I'm 5'4". My fiance, on the other hand, is 6'4", so there's about a foot difference in between us. But that doesn't mean that he deserves more human rights than me, obviously. So why would we discriminate against the unborn just because they're smaller than us? What about level of development? I know that some of you are still college students, so most of you that are in college are going to be under the age of 25. Neurologically, that means that your brains are still developing. Meanwhile, I'm about to be 30, and that means that I'm done. No more brain growth for me. But does my advanced level of development mean that I deserve more legal protections than you? Of course not. So why would we discriminate against the unborn because of their level of development? Or environment. I drove here from South Louisiana. Strangely enough, it made me go to Mississippi, then back to Louisiana before I could get to Arkansas. So I went through several different environments to get here. But nowhere along that trip did I become more of a human. So why do we think that an unborn child has to go through the magical birth canal in order to gain human rights? They're already a human. And then finally, degree of dependency. One of the best things about college is that you're finally getting out on your own, leaving your parents' house, and getting to depend on yourself instead of your parents for the first time in your life. But just because you're not dependent on your parents anymore doesn't mean that you gained human rights or any sort of inherent value. You were always valuable, even whenever your mom had to make breakfast for you. So why do we discriminate against the unborn? Because they're more dependent for their livelihood. So all of these reasons are reasons that abortion does not meet the non-discriminatory factor. We also, as pro-life feminists, believe that when we accept abortion as necessary in order to be successful as women, we're actually perpetuating a patriarchal society. Because we're saying that women need to fit into our society instead of forcing society to fit us. We're allowing them to pit us against our own children in order to be successful. A really good example of this is Cardi B. Not too long ago, Cardi B found out she was pregnant. And immediately, you heard all these cries talking about how she was going to ruin her career because she was having a baby in the middle of her rise. And much like whenever she rapped that she was not going to choose between her 2 pairs of Louboutins, she said she wasn't going to choose between motherhood and fame, and she didn't. She came out stronger than ever after having Culture and became the first female solo artist, to win a Grammy for Rap Album of the Year, because Cardi B gets it. But she's not the only one who gets it. Throughout American feminist movement, there have been women who have stood up and said that women deserve better than abortion. One of those women was Susan B. Anthony. She's pretty much the original feminist when we're talking about American feminism. In addition to all of her other suffragette movement activities, she was the leader of the feminist newspaper, The Revolution. And she also controlled their advertising. One of their advertising policies for the newspaper was that you could not advertise for quack medicine. Abortion was listed under quack medicine in their advertising policy. They said that the whole of the human race should shudder at the horror of what these doctors were trying to sell women. But that wasn't the only time the Revolution took a feminist pro-life stance. They also wrote an amazing article about another early pro-life feminist, Dr. Charlotte Lozier. Now, Dr. Lozier was awesome. She was one of the earliest female physicians in New York, and she successfully argued that Bellevue Hospital in New York should extend the same privileges to female physicians that they did to male physicians, and she won. And that was a huge win for the women of New York. The article in the Revolution about Dr. Lozier was about a man who came to her seeking an abortion for a lady friend of his. Dr. Lozier told him that he had come to the wrong place for such an unlawful and unnatural purpose. And this article is praising her, not only for telling him no, but for turning him into the police, because she said that a man who sought to abort a child was no more her patient than a man who came to her seeking to poison his own wife. And these are just 2 examples of some of the amazing pro-life feminists that have come along in the American feminist movement. And all of these women have had a very simple message that women deserve better. And that's really what I hope that you will get out of my talk tonight, is that abortion hurts women. And it's something that's not always easy to acknowledge. I've talked to too many women who have long-lasting effects emotionally, spiritually, and even physically. I've talked to a woman who can no longer vacuum her own house because every time she turns on the vacuum, it reminds her of the sound the machine made. I've talked to a woman who knows the exact birthday that her child would have been born, and every year she sits and she wonders, what would my child be like today? I've talked to a former clinic worker who told me that sometimes when she goes to wash her hands, she can still see the blood, that she can still see in the sink the tiny feet and tiny hands of a broken body that she had to put back together to make sure that the abortion was complete. These women all deserve better. They deserved a society that told them that they could do it, that they could be a mother and pursue their dreams. For far too long, we treated abortion as a Band-Aid on societal problems that we could solve if we would work together. Think about being a single mother in college, on a campus where there's no policy in place to protect you if you go into labor and miss a test. Or if your child gets sick and you have to take them to the doctor and miss class. No lactation rooms so that you can pump to feed your child. No access to childcare. If you were in that situation, what other option would you think there is but to choose your education or your child? Or in the workplace, if you don't have enough vacation time saved up to take care of not only your own body, but also your child after birth, How are you not supposed to think that you have to choose between your job and your child? Or what about even sometimes having to choose between your own child and your own safety? I've heard partner abuse be used as a justification for abortion because this woman needs an abortion or she's going to be tied to this abuser for the rest of her life. How are we okay with saying that she has to get an abortion in that situation instead of saying she shouldn't have to worry about that because she's being abused? How have we not reformed the system yet to where that is not an issue that she even has to think about? Abortion is not a solution to women's oppression. It's just another symptom that we're allowing to be used to keep women in their place. So as I leave you tonight, that's what I want you to take away from this talk. If we are buying into the idea that we as women need abortion in order to be successful, we're being fed misogyny, not feminism. This is not what our feminist mothers fought for, and it's not what we have to settle for. But we have to be willing to stand up and say that we deserve more. We have to stand up and say that we are finished. We're finished with the lie that women aren't free unless our babies die. Thank you.